Hey Mom, what's for dinner? It smells really good.
I'm making my chili. What do you smell?
Good food?
Okay, so here are all the herbs and spices I use for my chili. Ground cumin, chili powder. I use two kinds, a dark and a light. This is a great opportunity to talk about bulk spices. If you have a store that's got spices in the bulk foods aisle, that is a great way to go. I buy my peppercorns that way. I like to buy my chili powder, oregano, other things like that because they're fresh and delicious. So two kinds of chili powder. I've got oregano in there. I've got ground allspice. Now the oregano, I use Mexican style oregano typically. Ground allspice, salt, pepper, and then a surprise ingredient. What's that? I'm going to show you. So right here, I've got the cumin, two kinds of chili powder. There's my oregano, my allspice, my salt, my pepper, and this right here is cha-ching, chocolate, unsweetened cocoa. It does an amazing job making this chili so savory. It is not sweet. It's got a great flavor to it, and they'll never know what's in there, but it's fabulous. I love this chili because it's a great opportunity to add tons of veggies. Carrots, bell pepper, onion, garlic, 2 pounds of kale, which no one will ever know was in there, and a whole head of cauliflower. We take those veggies and pulse them in a food processor until the texture resembles ground beef. Then we put them in a bowl and save them for later because they're added after the chili cooks for an hour. A little tip about bell peppers. I like to place my knife parallel to the cutting board and roll my bell pepper as I cut it, taking off the main part of the bell pepper in one clean strip. It's easy to use, easy to process for any kind of a recipe. Cut off the bottom, trim those little bits off the top because you're going to use those as well in this chili recipe. And of course, throw the core away. Don't need it. You do want to make sure your veggies are approximately the same size when you do put them in your food processor. If you have small chunks and large chunks, you're still going to have that when you finish. Also, pulsing does a better job than letting it run straight the whole time in getting you even chunks that will be put in your food later. So there's the cauliflower. I'm actually about to do 2 batches on that as well. You could always use pre-riced, fresh, or frozen if you prefer. Same thing like bell peppers. If you don't like them, leave them out. If you like sweet potatoes, use those or leave them out. Carrots are fine. Butternut squash is fine. You could use green peppers if you prefer. So all of these things are great because you actually will not taste them in the final product. Perfect. All right, so there are my finished vegetables, the carrots, the tricolor peppers, and the riced cauliflower. Thing probably weighs about 8 to 10 pounds. It's a great way to stretch your meat budget. If you want to use less meat, or even if you wanted to go vegetarian, you could use these vegetables. I'm going to save this for later when I'm ready for it, after I've simmered the chili for an hour. Now for the garlic, you could use pre-peeled if you can find them in a bag at the store, but I always recommend fresh garlic and not the jarred garlic, or as some people call it, jarlic. There's not nearly as much flavor in it, but if that's all you have, then you need to double your garlic in most recipes. So this entire giant bag of kale pulsed down to just this little bit right here in this bowl. So we're going to use both of these giant bags, which as you can see weigh 16 ounces. You also want to take out all your big stems. Nobody wants to eat those. They leave those in the bags sometimes. All right, so we are ready to make the chili now that I've got all of the ingredients prepared. So the first thing is going to be about 4 tablespoons of oil in the bottom of my pot. You can use vegetable oil. I'm using olive oil. That works well. Next thing is going to be all of our onions and our garlic that we chopped up in the food processor. And that's about, what does that say, 2 quarts worth? So that's 8 cups, I would say, of onions, maybe 7 cups with also the garlic. I've got this gorgeous grass-fed meat from my friend who had a cow butchered. And this works whether you have sausage or anything else. You ever try to squeeze them out of a tube and it keeps getting stuck and it's a pain in the rear, just give it a little snip on the end, flip it over, and they pour right out without having to try to squeeze them out of the tube. Just breaks that little vacuum seal and makes it super easy. So there's my 8 pounds of meat we're going to use, and that will go in the pot after those have cooked about 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, so my recipe actually calls for 1 large can of petite diced tomatoes and 4 large cans of fire roasted tomatoes, but they didn't have that at the store. So each one of these is worth 1 large can. so I added an extra can of petite diced. The fire roasted I love because it gives it a good flavor. It calls for 4 6-ounce cans of tomato paste. Obviously you can double that. And then I didn't have enough of my homemade stock, so I added a little bit of better than bouillon, a little beef and a little chicken because it's what I had left. I didn't have enough of either one to finish out my stock. And I'm going to add a little bit of beer, which is not in my normal recipe, but it adds such a great flavor that I can't help but doing it, especially when it's Fat Squirrel, which is my favorite beer ever. Okay, so at this point, the onions are translucent and it's time to add the ground beef. It's a lot. Some people ask me why I am making so much when I make my chili, and it's because it takes the same amount of time to make a regular batch of chili that's going to feed 4 people as it does to make a batch of chili that's going to feed 20. So I might as well double my recipe, freeze some for later, or give some to a friend. So at this point I've added my 2 cans of tomato paste, and now I'm going to dump in all the rest of my spices and herbs that I measured out already. And stir, stir, stir to really get it all incorporated. Once everything's incorporated, we then add all of our tomatoes. And our stock. Which I think there's a little bit of stuff left in the bottom of here. That's the bouillon that I used, and I want to get all of that in there. All that good flavor. Yes. In there. And 2 of my very favorite beers. Give it a good stir. Let it simmer for an hour once it comes up to a boil. At this point, it's cooked for an hour, and it's time to add the instant coffee and to add the optional things, which in this case was the kale. All of those babies in there. Give that a stir, and then we'll add all those other vegetables that we processed in the food processor. So let's go there, and then all of this goes in, which is about 6 pounds worth of veggies. Stir all that in, and it cooks for another hour. See you in an hour. Well, that's really good, but it definitely needs some salt. So I'm going to season that up, stir it up, and see what it tastes like. Sometimes it doesn't just need salt, it needs a little bit of sugar. So I'm going to add a little bit of sugar to this because that sometimes will help to bring out all the flavors. And add a little bit more salt, touch of pepper. Let's get that all stirred in and see how we taste. That's perfect. We love ours topped with sour cream, cheddar cheese, and chives. If you loved watching, please like and subscribe.